he wrongfully shipped a person to El Salvador and ignored a unanimous Supreme Court decision to facilitate his return. Kilmar Abrego Garcia is a man who was living in Maryland. I believe he's been here in the States for 13 years, 14 years, I believe. He's a legal resident. A court had ordered a while back that he is able to stay here. ICE rounded him up. They saw that he had tattoos on his hands, and with no due process, no habeas corpus, no right to a lawyer, no due process whatsoever, they shipped him to El Salvador, to a slave labor camp. That should be the biggest story in the country, is this administration sending legal residents to a foreign country and spreading extremely dangerous and hilariously corrupt propaganda. They have posted several times about this man, the White House has, about Kilmar Abrego Garcia, and they posted a picture of his hand. It had his tattoos on it, but then the White House photoshopped the letters MS-13. They photoshopped it onto his hand. The intent there, I'm not trying to justify the White House doing this. The intent there was to say that those symbols translate to MS-13, but they didn't say that they had photoshopped. They just left it on there. So of course the right-wing chaos media took it and ran with it and spread the insanely false narrative that Mr. Garcia had the letters MS-13 on his hand. No, he had symbols that some people may think means MS-13, which of course that was debunked completely. A legal resident who had a judge rule a while back that he is able to stay here because of his asylum claim, because he's been here for 14 years, he's a working resident, he pays taxes, the thing about residents like him is that he pays all these taxes, but he doesn't reap all the benefits that a regular citizen would have. So undocumented immigrants pay income tax, they pay sales tax, but they don't receive all the benefits that our tax dollars give to regular citizens. In an evil kind of way, and I don't like saying it this way, but they're actually the most efficient people in our country. They pay a lot into this tax system. They don't receive as much back as citizens do. So they're really good for our economy. But essentially, all I'm trying to say is that this legal resident who had a judge rule that he was here and he was good to be here, the Trump administration rounded him up, sent him to El Salvador with no due process. This is the whole thing. This is the problem. Kilmar Abrego Garcia did not have any due process. And I see these right-wingers online talking about, oh, well, criminals don't get due process. That is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard. That's what due process is for. People are assumed innocent until proven guilty. And how you get to that conclusion, if they are guilty, is through due process. It's through litigation. It's through courts. People who say that criminals don't get due process, they're not living in our reality. Does that make sense? They've completely turned their brain off when they say that they don't get due process, because due process is the process in which people are found to be guilty or not guilty. And it's inhumane to not give someone a fair trial. Even mass murderers, even serial killers, most people choose to have a defense. And if it turns out that that person did not commit the crime, even if they did what they did, but it wasn't to the degree with which was claimed, that's all very important information. If someone accidentally killed someone, but we're being charged with murder, then due process is so important, because that could be the difference between someone getting life in prison and someone getting 10 years for accidentally hurting someone. So due process is extremely important. And if anyone says it's not, then don't listen to that person. I would actually, if someone said that to me, I would probably go out of my way to never talk to that person again about politics or about issues like that. They have a fundamental misunderstanding of how the legal system works. They did not pay attention in 8th grade civics class. We have sent thousands of people to El Salvador. Studies have shown that 75 to 90% of them don't have any violent criminal record at all. And of course, none of these people got due process. And you might be thinking, well, they were illegal just being here. Okay, first of all, most of them probably had an asylum claim. So what you just said there is probably not true, that they're all illegal. But let's just say they were all illegal. When people do illegal things, what happens? That's right. They get due process. They get a lawyer. They have a chance to defend themselves in court. That's how that works. That's usually how that works when you commit a crime. But none of these people did. And they've actually they've deported a 2-year-old U.S. citizen with brain cancer. You heard that right. This administration deported a 2-year-old girl. A 2-year-old little girl, U.S. citizen. Yes, you heard that right also. A U.S. citizen, 2-year-old girl with brain cancer. They deported her. Look it up. Look it up. It happened. Of course, ICE has detained hundreds of U.S. citizens. I mean, they didn't end up sending them because, thankfully, some of them were able to prove that they were citizens on the spot. They had documentation or whatever it was. But some aren't so lucky. Some people don't have their documentation with them. I don't carry mine with me. Sometimes I don't even bring my wallet with me places. I'm a citizen, obviously. Sometimes I don't have my wallet. Sometimes I don't have my phone. Sometimes I just go places just to go places. So if you're a brown person, if you're Hispanic looking, if you look like you're from Mexico or South America or Latin America, Central, whatever, and you're like me, you're a citizen, because there's tens of millions of US citizens who are Latino, Hispanic of some sort. They should have the same right as me to not carry their identification everywhere they go. So when those people are detained, they're going to have a hell of a time trying to prove that they're citizens. It's unacceptable. But that's what we voted for, right? The Lake and Riley Act, that's exactly what that did. It gave ICE the ability to detain, to arrest without warrant and without due process. They're able to ship them away. And the Supreme Court has shut it down. But guess what? The White House keeps giving the Supreme Court the middle finger and saying, oh, okay, well, how are you going to enforce that? How are you going to make us do that? Good question.